Hello and welcome to the Michigan Gardener January 2023 edition. Before you start, these are just outside temporarily. I just wanted you to be able to see the good color. These are our amaryllis that we featured in the last episode. This is probably this one's last bloom. The red and white one there will probably have one more bloom, and then that's probably it. There's some sort of a critter out there. Anyway, this will be the first time that you get to see an entire gardening year from us. We started in July last year, and it's January, and there's a ton of stuff to do. It's in the 30s out here right now, high 30s. So I probably want to wait until it gets a lot more frozen to start doing any pruning and things like that, but we'll get to that. My first planting of the year, January 1st, we're going to do right now. I have some different lettuces. I've got some gourmet baby greens. I've got some leaf lettuce. I've got some spinach. And I'm also going to plant some basil. And lettuce likes to be a little bit cooler, and my basement is cool enough that I think it will get some enjoyment down there. I'm going to start with the basil, and I've got some little, I don't even know, they're little potting trays with individual cells in them, and I've got some seedling compost in there. And we're gonna plant 12 and see where we go from there. We want it about a ½ an inch deep, each one. So we'll pop that in there. I got the compost wet before putting these in there because these things would just absolutely love to wash away. These will need a little bit of warmth for germination, I think, so I'm going to put these on a heat mat. Next, we're going to do some spinach, and these ones also like a ½ inch depth, and they like to be thinned out to about 6 inches apart. So I'm just going to make a little trench for them. Make it easy on ourselves. This one's pre-moistened, but obviously not great. And I'm just going to sow a little trench here. These seeds are a little bigger. So I'm going to thin these out. So I'm not going to put them too close, but certainly closer than 6 inches apart, because I want to pick the healthiest seedlings here. We should definitely have some spinach after a bit. Have some good light conditions for them. I have just the thing. All right. The rest of those back in our container, and we'll just cover it up. Just cover the trench over. They should be all right in there, just fine. All right, and I may have to give that one another water here so that I remember what's planted where. I'm going to be sure to label this spinach. Next, we'll do our baby green mesclun mix. And this one, you don't have to be super particular about it because you kind of want them to crowd a little bit because you're going to keep them small. But I'm just going to scatter it, along the surface here, and maybe give it a nice pat at the end here to make sure it's in good contact with the soil. But that should do it for these. Just a good pat down. And finally, we'll do this last one. These like to be about 1/4 inch, so making a little slit trench for them. These ones will need to be thinned to about 8 inches, but we'll plant a little trench of them here and see what comes up, and keep the strong ones and winnow the weak ones. All right. Close the trench. And that should do it.
All right, happy January. We are here getting started with our winter pruning. Winter pruning promotes growth. Summer pruning restricts growth. So the pruning that we're going to do today is going to hopefully help this tree to grow in a better shape. When you're pruning, there are some principles that you want to keep in mind. You want to first take out anything that's dead, any branches that are dead. Second, you want to take out any branches that are rubbing or crossing so that the tree does not develop a wound and get disease. And 3, I would say you want to use very sharp, clean implements to do the job. All right, so this tree really doesn't have anything dead to take off, but we do have a bunch of crossing branches, this being a prime example. So we're going to take this one off. Here's another branch that we're going to take off. For this tree, we feel like there are way too many branches cluttering up the center of the tree, and that it doesn't really look very Japanese. It is a Japanese maple, so we are going to try and thin out some of the cluster of branches in the interior of the tree, and at the same time we're going to take some of these lower branches off to raise the canopy a bit. So this one is a perfect one to take off. Another thing to keep in mind when you're making your cuts is that this little swell coming out from the main trunks, that's called the branch collar. You do not want to damage that, so you want to make your cuts just above it. Okay, so we've done what we're going to do for 1 year with this tree. You don't want to exceed 30% of the total tree growth. And one more thing that I forgot to mention is when you make your cuts, you want to make them at a bit of an angle so that water will run off them and not pool on the fresh cut. Okay, I'm here with our amaryllis bulbs that are both in stages of reblooming from the original bulb. This one is red, and this is its 3rd bloom since Thanksgiving. And it looked like this about a week ago, and I cut the bloom off right at the top and let the stem die out a little bit, and now I'm going to cut it off at the base just with the scissors so that it doesn't interfere with the new flower. I will do the same thing with this one, which is white and kind of red. It looks a little bit like a peppermint. Once the stem dries out a little bit. I saw online where another lady does that, and she said it kind of feeds the bulb a little bit. We're really missing the garden outside, and we have a lamp downstairs where Kyle has started some lettuces, and he's been growing some basil and other cooking herbs. And we decided that we would like to do some carrots and radishes as long as we have that set up downstairs. We're going to do some little finger carrots. These take about 1.5 months to mature. Normally you would do carrots by sowing them thinly in a rill. I'm just going to scatter these. These are not big carrots like you would use. And then I'm going to cover these with about 1/4 inch of compost. We have some dairy dew in these veggie trays. The radishes are going to take about 1 month, and they'll be completely ready at that point. I actually misspoke. We're gonna do a 1/4 inch of compost over the radishes, and I did about 1/8 of an inch over the top of the carrots. All that's left to do is water these and put them under the light.
We're getting some snow now, so now would be the perfect time to go to Florida and visit another garden. And that's how we'll conclude the January episode. We'll be back in February. There are still things to do as we ramp up for our planting in March. Bye. So this is another little stop on my Florida Gardens tour. This is the Mary Selby Botanical Gardens in Sarasota. This one seems quite a bit more wild than the Florida Botanical Gardens, but we'll see. This is one of these somewhat famous places. I believe it was somebody's residence at one point, and I will try to get more information as the tour progresses. Right behind me is an old pioneer cemetery, and it's located right next to this little chapel. Kind of neat. I think the last grave in there that I saw marked with a date was in the 1940s. If you look behind me, that's mangrove, and that makes sense because we're on kind of a salty bay here, and right behind me is a structure called the Webb's Packing House. Well, it turns out I was misinterpreting the purpose of this. It was actually this is a historical building that they constructed in 1990 to talk about the citrus packing industry. So they'd have oranges and they'd feed them through that thing, and it's like a sizer, and the right size orange goes into the right size box because there's a real narrow at that end and a little wider at this end, and they roll it down and it goes in there. Now here's an interesting tree. I'm not sure 100%. I think that may be a live oak, but I will verify that and put the name in the lower corner. But one reason it's interesting is it's been trying to fall over for some time, and they've put in these supports to keep the limbs upright. That's similar to what they do in Japan for the very, very old cedars and things in Japanese gardens. This is the so-called sunken garden. And I think it's just because they dug it into a pit. I like how they've done it with a water feature with some plantings around it. And if you look, they've kind of lined their pit with different hedging. And then they've got a focal point in the background. Tonight there's going to be a wedding there, I guess. They don't have this structure labeled, but I'm almost certain that's a spring house. It's dug into the side of a hill, and it's going to be cooler in there than it is in the surrounding environs, and that's probably where they kept perishables that they wanted to keep a little bit cooler back before refrigeration. So we're more or less at the tip of Spanish Point here, and they're doing some restoration work back there. It looks like there was once a formal garden here. I'll show you, like back over my shoulder there, you can see there was some sort of a water feature over there that they're restoring at some point, but this is like a very, very natural Florida coastal environment that's around me. All of the, pretty much everything you're gonna see here is native stuff that's been here forever. This is, I think, the largest natural coastal place left in Florida, and it's really neat that they've kept it as natural as it can be. I mean, obviously they've done some really good stewarding of the resources here and kept it mostly wild, but you know, they do trim things Like for instance, there's a tree right there. You know, they keep things pruned, and I'm sure they clear dead stuff out as they need to, but most of the species here I think are indeed stuff that has grown here forever. And this is the little Sarasota Bay. We're looking back towards land from the tip of Spanish Point here. Really quite a neat little place. There's dolphins and manatees and all sorts of things out there. I haven't seen any in here, but I did see a dolphin north of here just a bit. This is kind of a classic mangrove area. The water rises and falls in here, and then obviously when storms come in it raises up a lot, but they have those roots that stick up above ground, and it kind of forms a little buffer between like ocean or, you know, salty big bay stuff and the coast, and it helps protect against erosion. Really wish I could see a naughty alligator, but we haven't seen one of those yet. These are also cabbage palms. We saw those at the Florida Botanical Garden, except that these ones have been trimmed so that the trunk is neat. You can see some more in the background there towards the lower left. But you see that with those live oaks like that. And a lot of times there's one of those longleaf pines around, but I don't see one right now. They must be more inland because I bet the soil's a bit more salty here. Another plant you'll see next to those cabbage ferns are these red cedars. They used to make boxes and such out of those back in ancient times, but that's really a native, another one of the native cedars that you'll see here in Florida.